This panel that we're going to be looking at is themed Assessing Women's Representation in Governance, and it speaks directly to both the promise and the unfinished business of our democratic journey. I am quite delighted that the theme of this year's CJID is reimagining democracy, and it's very significant. Now, let me give you a bit of a background before I welcome my panelists. Now, across the African continent, there is an undeniable pattern. Countries that have intentionally expanded women's political participation through legal reforms, structural quotas, consistently show stronger governance outcomes and deeper accountability. Of course, you've heard about Rwanda for over a decade, and then there is Senegal, there is South Africa, there is Ethiopia. Yet, in Nigeria, Africa's largest democracy, our numbers continue to tell a sobering story. Today, women hold less than 6% of seats in the National Assembly, ranking Nigeria among the lowest in the region for female political representation. So this is not just a statistic. It's a mirror reflecting a democracy that has not yet fully been reimagined. So, the panel that I'm about to invite will interrogate why. We will look at the conversation on representation. We will also unpack one of the most consequential legislative proposals of our time, the Reserved Seats for Women's Bill, not merely as just a technical policy instrument, but a constitutional moment with the potential to reset Nigeria's gender policy. Now, our task today is not to diagnose the gaps alone, but to resurface this conversation with evidence, pathways that move Nigeria closer to a representative democracy. So I am honored to introduce the distinguished voices who will help us to navigate this conversation, one that is holistically going to reimagine our democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome, with a resounding applause, the distinguished voices on my panel. Honorable Akin Rotimi, Chairman, House Committee on Media and Public Relations, as he walks to the panel. I would also like to welcome Dr. Asmao Leo, Executive Director, Center for Nonviolence and Gender Advocacy in Nigeria. I would also like to welcome Chief Osazu Igbenedion Okuche, Convener, Reserved Seats for Women's Bill Campaign Coalition, and President, Group of Companies, TOS. They're trying to move me too far away from my panelists. All right, so we will start this conversation in earnest, but permit me to say that on this side of the room, I have the faculty, not just participants, but the faculty. So I will be asking for your updates, your feedback, and your recommendations, and including your questions at the end of this conversation. So let us start with, first of all, examining barriers of women's political participation. I think I'll start with you, Dr. Asmao, because you're the first one seated by me. All right, so I'll reintroduce you. Victoria Samuel Sani, Coordinator, Women with Disabilities, Inter-Party System. Thank you so much. I beg your pardon. All right, so let me begin with asking the question first. When you think about Nigeria's democracy and you think about women's participation, not just as women in politics, but women as part of the system of the voting process, what comes to mind?
Hello. Okay, I guess that's the person we just introduced.
CJ, I think you're confusing me. I think this is absolutely, and I got it right. So again, I beg your pardon and reclaim back your name. Dr. Asmao Leo, thank you so much.
Okay, please can you take the question again?
So I was asking, when you think about democracy, Nigeria, and women's participation, not just as in the political space, but as participants of democracy, what comes to mind?
I think I see strength, because the strength of democracy, sorry, please, let me just acknowledge also the opportunity given me by CJIV for me to be a panelist today. So when I think of democracy and women participation, I just don't look at it as an electoral or a political thing, because there are two things. We always confuse what is electoral in nature and what is political in nature. Politics is about women participation from like the beginning of the electoral process, during the election, and even after the election. That's during the governance process. But electoral participation for women is basically in terms of registering as a voter, registering as an aspirant, and participating even as either an election observer or even a party agent. So we are looking at it this afternoon in terms of a holistic approach. Women in Nigeria, we know statistically it is proven that women in Nigeria constitute almost 100 million. If going by the number that the Nigerian population is 200 million. So we constitute almost half of the population of Nigeria. But what we see is that women put a lot into this electoral process and governance process. But we don't get to enjoy the benefits, or what people call the dividends of democracy. So times have changed that we have to begin to interrogate, why is it so? And then we have to go to the foundation. It all started from our cultural norms and values. How do we perceive women in our communities? We always feel women are just an afterthought. That's why when you go for village meetings, even during mobilization for elections, you see that the women will always take the back seat. And if critical decision of who should govern in the community, you always find that they either make you the women leader in that community, and that women leader is just tokenism. So that when we are ticking the box, we say, oh, we have a woman leader already, so we don't need her to participate in the mainstream of governance. For us to change the entire future and the transformation of Nigeria, we're talking about peace and security, we are talking about development, we are talking about diplomacy, we are talking about defense. In every aspect of our national life, not just in democracy, women have to have a place on the table. Like I always tell people, it's not even just having a place at the table, but even becoming a voice at the table. Because we've seen instances whereby they say, oh, bring the women on the table so that they can cover the quota. Just for instance, when you're saying, okay, we need 10 men, for 10 people rather, to occupy a position, they'll say, okay, bring 2 women, just as tokenism for them to be there. But when decisions are taken, you will hardly even hear their voices talk more of their perspective being respected or recognized. So for us to move forward as a country, we cannot continue to undermine the perspective, contributions, and the realities of women. Nigerian women contribute equally to the development of this nation, whether as farmers, whether as civil servants in public service, or even in politics. Then why not give them the opportunity to also contribute in governance and affairs that also talks about their
Absolutely. That's a punchy opening. And thank you so much. A place at the table, but also a voice at the table. So let me come to you, Chief Okuche. Now, when people think about the reserved seats for women's bill, they often ask, what is a democratic value? And I want to ask you this because you have been in the conversation, you have heard the question, you have heard the misconceptions as well. Now, what misconceptions about the reserved seats for women's bill have you encountered, and how do you address them?
Thank you, Adora, for that very important question. First things first, good afternoon, everyone. Are we all still awake? Awesome. So this is a very important discussion, and I would like to take the opportunity to thank the conveners of this very important event, CJID, for putting this together and making room for this very important discussion at this very critical time in the legislative trajectory of this bill. The reserved seats for women's bill, for those who don't know, is a piece of legislation that's being currently considered at the National Assembly. It looks to add 74 additional seats to the National Assembly. That's 37 in the Senate, 37 in the House of Representatives, and 108 seats across the 36 state assemblies. That's 3 additional seats per state. What this is looking to do is simple. It's to shore up the numbers of women who are participating in politics, specifically in the parliamentary arm of government. Women make up 50% of Nigeria's population, as most of you in the room know, but we occupy less than 6% of seats. Across the 36 state assemblies, at our last count, women were only 51 out of 993 members of parliament. At the National Assembly, women are only 20 out of 469. That's 4 in the Senate and 14 and 16 in the House of Representatives. So when we make a case for the reserved seats for women's bill, I always like to talk data, because they say men lie, women lie, numbers don't, right? So the World Bank did a report this year in 2025, and it found that women, when they're involved in decision-making, specifically in the legislative arm of government, they invest 35% more in education. The UNDP Gender Governance Index of 2024 found that women are 22% less prone to corruption. The McKinsey Africa Report 2025 found that economies recover faster from crises like pandemics, and countries recover faster from crises such as pandemics and recessions when women are on the decision-making table. So there's a democratic argument to this. It's not tokenism, as the misconception, across the different states and the different geopolitical zones, like to reiterate. This is a competition. It's not appointive. Women will be coming together to compete amongst each other. They will go through the party primaries, they'll go through the general elections, and they would win seats at the National Assembly, win seats at the state houses of assembly, and they will compete amongst each other. So this misconception about, is it a handout, is it going to be merit-based, is it tokenism, has been quelled by this. And as I said, as I reeled out in the statistics and these figures, is that research has been done, has been proven that when women are on the decision-making table, our society will improve for it. There'll be less corruption, there'll be more peace building, there'll be more infrastructural development and stronger economies at large. And I think most importantly, we need to ask ourselves, as women, we have the lived experiences of what it is to be mothers, what it is to be primary caregivers. If we have a parliament that is not reflective of our lived experiences, can they properly legislate for us? What's the answer to that question? I can't hear you. So therefore, it is important that we have women with the lived experiences of being girls, of being women, of being mothers, of being primary caregivers on the table of decision-making in Parliament. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So reserve seats are not tokenism. Now, let me come to, just as he was jotting away, Honorable Akinrotimi, you're the chairman, House Committee on Media and Public Relations as well. And I've had the privilege of having sat with you in conversations in room talking about reserved seats for women. Now, there seems to be some sort of psychological barrier in terms of understanding. And I'm coming with this because one of the questions people often ask is the fact that how do we look at the concerns or the misconceptions driving resistance to the reserved seats for women's bill? Apparently, we started the quest with 37 at the Senate, 37 at the House of Representatives. But at the moment, at the Senate, there is a banding of numbers to mean that 6, which means 1 per geopolitical zone. And that drastically reduces the numbers. And some have said perhaps it's the misconception, perhaps it's the fear. What do you think really is the missing conversation here?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You see, when the other ladies saluted you, it was different. So I know that you don't like your parliamentarians very much. It's our duty to continue to work to earn your trust. And that is what the 10th Assembly House of Representatives, under the leadership of Right Honorable Abbas Tajuddin, will continue to do, so that you'll once again believe that your representatives are working in your best interest. I bring you greetings from the House. I had to just sneak away because today we have a session dedicated to security challenges. We empathize with Nigerians on all that is going on, and we've dedicated throughout today to discussing just security challenges. And there's a nexus, of course, between the challenges that Nigeria faces and the fact that all this while we've been flying as a bird with one wing. You have 50% of the population, but you have a dismal less than 5% representation in the National Assembly. And just like the moderator, right, and the earlier speaker has rightly said, there's a lot of misconception and just a psychological pushback. One of the first things is that we have exceptional female lawmakers. We have the likes of Honorable Boma Goodhead. We have the likes of Honorable Kafilat Ogbara. You have, so many other, Miriam Onoha. And a lot of our colleagues feel that if these people, these women, were able to earn regular seats by slugging it out with men in elections, then every other person should similarly go and slug it out. And people would point to the fact that even though we're pushing for reserve seats, there are avenues through the party structures, right, where our leaders can be compelled to ensure that more women come back. So there was an example recently, we had by-elections where the two seats that were contested for in Edo State and Ogun State, right? And it was women that won those elections. So you have Honorable Omosede Igbenedon coming back to the House, and then also Honorable Ayola Elegbeji from Ogun State as well. So there are those avenues, and I come from a tradition. I served for many years. My mentors, Governor Kade Fahimi and BC Fahimi, there are people that ensured that their administration was very reflective of women, and the current governor Biodo Ebanje has continued in that tradition. Ekiti State today has a female deputy governor, a female SSG, a female head of service, a female deputy speaker, and the list goes on. And the highest, I think about the highest number for a state legislature in terms of representation of women. So there are a lot of those arguments that there is a lot of action that can take place that would increase the numbers of women. But we know the fact that I have been in politics for very many years by the grace of God, and I know the resistance and the challenges, that women have in very, very patriarchal systems of politics. And we know the entry barriers. And that is why this piece of legislation, which is a constitutional amendment, right, to, allow for us to bridge this gap. Because we've tried all those other avenues, but so far, it's obvious that we're not getting it right. So part of the misconception about this bill is that, okay, in Ekiti now, there's 6 honorable members. Which one of you will give up your seats, right? And some people will argue that I have a constitutional right, whether I'm a man or a woman, to contest, But we try to make people understand, and we've gotten quite some distance with that we're talking about additional seats. So nobody is contesting your right to be able to contest the existing 360 seats in the House, 109 in the Senate. But this is an additional measure, and it is also something that has a sunset and sunrise clause. That means that it starts at a point in time, and then after a few years, a few electoral cycles, we check it to see if it has measured up. Maybe by then there will even be more women in the National Assembly that men will have to say, please, we need reserved seats for men too. But the point about it is that it's not something that is in perpetuity. It's something that is going to be reviewed after a period of time, and then, can be taken off. So we've been advocating, and we must, give kudos to, my sister here was done a lot of work, and a lot of the non-profits and media that have done a lot, to support this. I've had, to engage them many times, that sometimes it might seem as though their advocacy is framed as if we're having a national referendum on it, as though it's the whole of Nigeria that is going to vote. But unfortunately, or fortunately, as the Constitution has prescribed, the next stage of this bill is going to be decided by 360 rep members and 109 senators. And even after that, it's going to go to state houses of assembly. So your representatives are going to do the work on your behalf. So what you need to do is to make sure that you are in touch with your representative. If I ask here, how many people know who your representative is? Aha. No, do you know who your representative is? It can't be zero. You know who your representative is. Do you know who your senator is? Are you sure? Because these are the people that are going to vote. I am going to vote on behalf of the people of Ikole and Oye, that what we want, right, is for the reserved seats bill. So you have to find your representative, you have to find your senator, and do all that you can to compel them to vote in favor of this landmark legislation. So those are the issues around, the perceptions, it's a continuous work in progress addressing the other issues. But it is obvious that we failed so far, right? If we have such numbers. We have state houses of assembly where you don't have one woman sitting at a table where things are decided. I've been married for 15 years by the grace of God, and some of the greatest mistakes I've made are things that I did not consult with my wife about. And then I'll have to...
Can somebody clock it, please?
And then I would, have to... eat the humble pie and go back to her and say, that thing that I didn't really tell you that time, but while I don't do, you understand? So you need to have women at the table. It just only makes sense. You need to have women in the rooms where things that are being decided about them are being discussed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. Please, another round of applause for him. That was very deliberate and insightful. So let me come to you now, Victoria. When the conversation around the reserved seats for women's bill started, there was also the conversation about the minority within the minority. And we're talking about a holistic democracy. And there was a call for, the bill is called HB 1349. But there was also a call for a review that some certain numbers within the number of 181, at least 5% be kept for women with disability. And it was being looked at House Bill 1931. But talking about inclusion and the reserved seats for women's bill in itself, Victoria, why do you think it's very instructive for us to first of all look at the bill? Because he talked about the missing numbers at the state assembly. Over 13 states do not have women representing, women at the community level. And when you talk about community building, women are the burden bearers. So how important is this conversation for a woman and for women with disability, especially at this time?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
I count it a privilege for CJID to include me in this conversation. And issues of women with disabilities is something that sometimes you look at it as if it's not important. But come to think of it and look at it in this way. If you have a child with disability, what do? You have to involve the child in everything you do and to include the child in all things around the family so that that child will adapt to everything that is going on around the family and outside the family. I'm talking about myself. When I was growing up, I do other things with my siblings, just like any other child. And sometimes I do things and they feel, this one is very stubborn. That's the way they tag us. She's very stubborn, but it's the way I was brought up. I grew up like any other child. The only thing I knew they could not give me to do was to carry ground and go and ground. So, but involving women with disabilities is a very, very important thing because when we are talking about inclusion, about the a 34% bill, women with disabilities also need to be involved in it because we have 4.2% of women in the parliamentary, but no woman with disability is into the elected positions. So, but we also have women with disability who are capable of meeting the standard of the involvement of politics, because some of us went to school. At least we have those that did not go to school, but involving us and inclusion is something that moves the country to greater heights. Inclusion and accessibility is something that changes the country's situation. We are also meeting up to other targets too. Just imagine you're a person with deafness or you cannot hear, and this sign language interpreter is not here. It means you can't hear anything. So, but including persons with disabilities is a very critical thing and very important. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Victoria. And we cannot overemphasize that it is very critical, especially if we're talking about reimagining democracy. Now, let me come back to you, Dr. Asmao. You talked a lot about political party structuring when you started your conversation and your backgrounding, and I want to take you there. Now, I mean, in your work with communities and civil society organizations, what are the most persistent grassroots barriers that perhaps hinder women from entering into party structures or even politics?
Thank you so much, Adora, for this. I think one of the most prominent one is the issue of exclusion from the party structure. In political parties always have their own structure from the national, subnational, to the ward level. From the ward level, the most active form of people that participate in electoral process are the women. The mobilizers, community mobilizers are the women. The people that the politicians, sorry, with due respect, sir, the politicians usually give salt and wrappers to are the women. And when it comes to, like I remember saying that in passing, when it comes to giving them position, that they will transit from just being mobilizers to people that could even aspire to be something. One thing I love about politics is that you grow into it like any other profession. So if women at the grassroots could start maybe by being ward leaders in a party, right? From there, they will now evolve into becoming councillors. They can evolve being maybe a deputy chairman in the local government to becoming a chairman, House of Assembly, to National Assembly. That is the trajectory we are looking at. But when at that level, where you're supposed to develop your capacity as a politician or as an aspirant, you are already disqualified by both the party structure and the patriarchal norms that exist within the community. This goes a long way to hinder even the women from participating. 1. 2, electoral violence, or what we call political violence, whichever you call it. Women are very much interested, like me, in politics. But whenever I sit down and I look at what happens to other women that are politicians, I said, if this is how politics will be, then I don't think I am ready. And this is an honest confession from someone that has been there. As a young woman, I think in 2002, I was one of the first people NDI trained as a legislative intern at the National Assembly. I had high hopes of becoming maybe a politician one day. But along the line, I think I had to choose another profession. Rather than becoming a politician, I became a gender advocate. And I think I am now supporting women that have the confidence, that also have the strength to venture into that.
No, you're coming back soon. Don't worry. When they pass the bell, we'll
maybe in future.
Yeah.
So, talking about electoral violence, when we use toggery, no woman, or maybe character assassination, you understand? When you cyberbullying, when you pick a particular person because you know that person has the capacity to even win against a male opponent, and you begin to call her a prostitute. You begin to go back to her history, where her great-grandmother was this. We don't see that happening to men. When a woman wants to aspire, nobody knows whether he's also I don't know whether we have male prostitutes, but still, we don't look at their character, whether they have credibility for that position. But I don't know why it has become a norm that a woman's integrity, I'm not saying that credibility, integrity is not good. For me, that's what I preach. Because if a woman wants to venture there and you don't have these characters, this kind of, characteristics in you, you might not represent us well. And sometimes we talk about women representing us. It's not every woman that I want to go and be represented there. That's why in conversation we're having the special B, we really need to be serious. Who are those women that will represent us? Not women in men's clothing, right? So we need actual women that will go. Not the ones that will say, it's not only women that voted me here. We know it's not only women. But you also have the heart for the women that also supported you to be there. So I think there are a lot of factors. But at this point, I think let me just pause. Another thing is the issue, lastly.
For now, yes.
Okay, lastly, for this session. So when you begin to, pick on a woman and, okay, let me just say, because I wouldn't want to create any form of...
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Express yourself.
For instance, if you are a woman, an aspirant, right? You want to, venture into, at every level, the first target will be your home. Most women politicians now, sorry to say it, but I am a researcher, so permit me to use my research cap. They are either not married or their marriage is standing on one leg. Yeah. Why is it so? But men can venture. In fact, some of them are having, if there are 10 terms in the National Assembly, some men are still going first time, second time, third time, fourth time, 10 times they will be there. Nobody talks about it affecting their marital status. But once a woman is there, they come to your husband telling him, you don't need to allow this woman to go there. If you do, she will no longer be a woman. She will become a public object. You have to go. Sometimes, if she's not married, they go to her father and tell the father, tell this girl, she's too ambitious. Her place is in the kitchen or the other room. She's not supposed to be there. So when we begin to tell that, and you know what that does? It says in the mind of young girls that have aspirations to become something in life. It shrinks them. It makes them to cage themselves not to even be ambitious to becoming something. So we need to create that enabling environment.
Absolutely.
For every woman that has a dream, a girl child having a dream to becoming a woman someday and occupying a place of leadership.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please, a round of applause. I really needed to allow her to vent because she is coming not just from experience. When a political journey or trajectory takes you through a roadmap where you now say to yourself, I don't think this is for me, then we are losing not just your voice, but your capacity to cheer on a lot of young girls, and they want to see more women like you, so don't give up. That's the first message I'll give to you. Then let me come to Chief Okuche. I saw you nodding away when she was speaking so passionately. And there was something she said about, political party structure. She talked about, violence and, indeed, the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, starting from today. And one of the key things she mentioned is violence against women in elections. And someone also said the song No Romance Without Finance should be changed to No Politics Without Finance, because that's the reality of our day. But coming back to you, you have worked extensively, as part of the committee conversations around the reserve seats for Women's Bill and, the work that the deputy speaker is doing. You just got back from Ghana, you saw the energy of women in the room, looking at leadership for young girls. How do you think that the crossroads that we are at right now can really be managed? And I'm asking you this because of the political buy-in for the bill within not just party leadership, but the National Assembly. Some say, and this is arguably true, that perhaps the National Assembly, the House of Representatives, seems to, like and want the bill because it was sponsored by the Deputy Speaker and the Speaker. But that the Senate seems a little lukewarm. However, are also open to possible amendment in terms of numbers. But are we looking at reducing numbers, or are we looking at building political will of these lawmakers at this point?
Thank you, Adora. I think you've asked a multi-pronged question that must be responded to in
2 layers.
Yes, in very many layers. First things first, I'll piggyback off what Dr. Asmao had said. The barriers to entry for women in politics is structural. it's financial, it's cultural, it's religious, and it's traditional. We hear there is a danger, however, of a single story. When Dr. Asmao had referenced the women who currently occupy political positions, having not been married or marriages standing in one leg, I think that's where the media comes in. We need to not only spotlight the few women who are in politics, but the women who aspire to be in politics, highlight their credibility, highlight their integrity, and highlight their competence. This is a challenge I pose to the media people in the room today. When we talk about the current stance and the buy-in of legislators, whether in the Senate or in the House of Representatives, TOS Foundation has taken it upon itself to launch a civic accountability tool called 469tracker.com, which gives you first-hand insight to where your parliamentarians stand on the bill. So right now, you can actually bring out your phone and go on 469tracker.com, and you can see where parliamentarians in your state stand regarding their support for the reserved seats for women's bill. 469 stands for the total number of parliamentarians both in the Senate and in the House of Representatives. In June or July, Adora, I led a delegation of civil society organizations to visit the Senate President, yes, who we intimated about the intricacies of the reserved seats for women's bill. And he said to us, the media was there, and he said to us, he has 4 daughters, he has a wife, and he sees no reason why he spends so much money on his daughter's education, and one day they aspire to be a politician and they're told that they cannot do it. Go back to the room, go back to the kitchen, and stay there. So he threw his support behind the bill, as well as the 20-plus other senators that were there. However, they raised a very salient point. They said, as presently constituted today, the Senate is less than 1/3 of the House of Representatives. We have 109 senators as of today, and we have 360 members in the House of Representatives. So we cannot ask for the same number of additional seats that we are asking for in the House of Representatives. So when the joint Senate and House of Representatives Committee on Constitution Review met a couple of weekends ago in Lagos, the outcome of that meeting was reflective of what the Senate President had told us, that 37 will not fly. Our demand, as I said earlier, was 37 additional seats in the Senate, 37 additional seats in the House of Representatives. Indeed. So they came back and said what they are willing to deliberate on would be 6 additional seats in the Senate, which was heartbreaking. But remember, this reserve seats is not the finish line, it's just the beginning. And the House kept its own at 37. Because as you rightly mentioned, the sponsor of the bill in the House of Representatives is the Deputy Speaker, the Right Honorable Benjamin Kalu, who has been championing this, has been at the forefront of the discussions, and the Speaker, a great he for she. He goes to the Interparliamentary Union, he's talking about the importance of the bill, he's talking about having more women in Parliament. So at the House, they kept it at 37 because they are confident that, you know, they're able to rally up a lot of the legislators in there to vote in support of the bill. But the Senate came back that these numbers wouldn't work for us, would rather go with 6. So as of today, we have 43 additional seats after that Constitution Review Committee met. We have 43 additional seats in the National Assembly and still 108 across the 36 state assemblies. Another person had asked, I have a fear about it going to the state assemblies. I don't even have a fear of it passing in the national. In the state assemblies, how are we going to do this, given the fact that you have states like Jigawa, who the chairperson of the Women Affairs Committee in Jigawa State Assembly is a man, by the way. So how do you pass this bill in states like this? So we galvanized the support of the Nigerian Governors Forum And all 36 state governors, through the Governors Forum, endorsed the reserved seats for women's bill. I'm sure most of you know that the governors wield a significant influence on the speakers of the state assemblies. So we believe that with the pressure from the state governors, with the pressure from the political parties, which we're also consulting, and through the traditional leaders as well, we held a symposium where the Sultan of Sokoto was present, the president of Khan, some Islamic clerics as well, who reiterated that don't use religion as a barrier to, to support this bill. We support it, therefore you should as well. So with all these voices that we've galvanized through the help of other CSOs that are working in the space as well, we believe that this time around, the reserved seats for women's bill will become law, because we've done the legwork, we've consulted widely with these lawmakers, traditional and religious leaders, and it's a reform whose time has come. As of today, Nigeria ranks 54 out of 54 in Africa in terms of women's representation. As Adora said, I was in Accra just last week. They have a gender affirmative law. Accra is at, I believe, 14%. Senegal, I believe, is 44%. Rwanda, 63%. Nigeria, we did carry last. We are at less than 5%, less than 6%. So we need to do better. And if we're talking about building our economy, if we're talking about building better infrastructures, better healthcare, better education, we need to have women on the decision-making table. So please use 469tracker.com. A fact sheet by TOS Foundation was handed up. Sir, do you mind just raising yours up? Yes, this is it, this fact sheet. Please go through it. When you're writing your reports, use the useful and fact-checked information from here. Go on 469 Tracker, check who is in support and who is against.
Absolutely.
Call them out if you have to, and also credit the ones who are already pledging their commitment, because voting is on December 9th. That's just less than 2 weeks away. So we need all your support and partnership in getting this bill through this time.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That was very detailed. And yes, you did answer all my layers quite well. Let me come to Honorable Rotimi. Now, something significant shaped my ideal around the Reserved Seats for Women's Bill campaign. And that was, I am the Southeast Zonal Coordinator for the Reserved Seats Bill campaign. And, I went to the Southeast during the Senate public hearing, and of course the House of Representatives public hearing. And when I got to the Southeast, I think the first thing that met me was shock. The shock was that even the local media, the people in the media didn't quite understand what reserved seats for women's bill was all about. So they just felt like it was, a bill that just says more women in leadership. And why is this bill just for a certain number of women? Will it just be for APC? So there was a lot of, ambiguity in understanding what the bill was. So the first conversation was to do a localized, domesticated media tour, which got all the local media to a room to say, this bill, it's not about women alone. It's about community development. And that is the story of all and some of the coordinators within the reserved seats for Women's Bill campaign coalition. And I'm bringing this question to you because negative narratives become norm if truth is not the alternative. And you are the chair of the media committee. Now, what work is the committee doing to shift public narratives around women in governance? Because I think it starts from that.
Thank you very much. The two previous speakers, as I sat down, I was just shaking. I said, this matter is serious. But you see, there are a lot of cross-cutting issues, right? We'll continue to address issues of sexual and gender-based violence, right? By the grace of God, I'm the sponsor of the bill to prohibit, redress, and prevent sexual harassment in educational institutions, which has passed, thank you very much, which has passed in the House and in the Senate, and is being transmitted to the President, so we can join our voices in advocacy, because all of these issues within political party structures, as every other unit of society, right, affect women's, chances. And as I listen with a lot of empathy, and I empathize with you and all women, because I know what it is that I go through as well, even as a man in politics and governance, and I can imagine just how challenging it is. But I must also mention that there is also equal opportunity issues. You understand? We also need to toughen up, right? Getting into that space of politics and governance is a lot of work. It's a lot of challenges. You develop a thick skin. Is it today they've been calling someone a prostitute? Is it today? Can someone say not today? It's not today now. They can call you whatever. You have to focus. Do you understand? And play the long game and build allyships and build networks once you have your own focus. So issues of violence and all of that, we'll continue to work on those cross-cutting issues. Now, you talked about, the stereotypes. So again, I must mention, I'm also a member of the House Committee on Constitutional Review. So I represent Ekiti on that committee. So I've sat in all those meetings that you talked about, and Chief Oguche is just very accurate about a lot of the, a lot of the resolutions we arrived at. We even just had a retreat yesterday on some of these issues. So we'll continue to work on them. However, I must, especially charge the media. I know she asked me specifically as my role, right? In media and public affairs, I'm the spokesperson. I can only just try so much. I have he for she's as the leadership of the House, the Speaker, fantastic, gentleman. The Deputy Speaker was my predecessor as spokesperson, so he understands my role and we work very closely together on that role. Now, so I'll even give you an example. I'm a member of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, representing Nigeria on that association. And some time ago, I was nominated to a global leadership role, right, from the Nigerian Parliament. And guess what? From the Commonwealth, right, they wrote back to us and said, we should send a woman nomination. Do you understand? So there are those avenues that other parts of society can also work. And, my own leadership did not even bother arguing, because you could have argued that, well, our representation and this, we've had a few other women here and there, but they are ceded to that. And there was what you call positive discrimination. So my prospects in life, because I would have been able to add that one to my CV, but I was stepped down. And a female colleague was pushed forward. So there are those avenues that our leadership intentionally does. So for example, the House Committee on Constitutional Review has one representative from every state. But the leadership of the House decided that all the women in the House of Representatives are automatically members of the Constitutional Review Committee. So meaning that, we will have otherwise had just a sprinkling of women. But now we have 14 women that are added. I don't know if you understand what I mean.
I think that needs an applause.
It needs an applause, because that is an intentional effort by the House leadership. So for us, we also spotlight women. We ensure in our committees, ad hoc committees, standing committees, women are very well represented in all of these committees. And we also try as much as possible to spotlight the role of women. We also work very hard to disabuse and change negative stereotypes about women in leadership. So Honorable Kafilat, who chairs the House Committee on Women Affairs, she's in a very happy marriage and has children and is doing very well and is not failing in personal life or in public life. And she's still slugging it out and ensuring that her voice is heard.
Absolutely.
Do you understand? So it's a balance of different factors. The House can only try so much, but the media and other, parts of society have a role to play in encouraging us along this line. And I'll just leave with this point. I hear this recurring story about cost of governance issues. When we talk about, you mean that after 469 members, you still want to have more. You understand? And people are even already framing a narrative. When I talk about all these negative narratives and stereotypes, people will say, we know what they want to do. They want to just include their girlfriends and their daughters that it will not change anything. So even before we get there, they're already framing the narrative in advance that any woman that comes in through special seats is one politician's girlfriend. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. I think women too, you need to work on some of your issues within women as well, because a lot of these negative stereotypes are also advanced by women. So you are not able to get there, another woman gets there. You said, do you understand? It's not every woman that slept her way to the top. Do you understand? There are women that are, are identified by their intellect, do you understand, and their capacity, and giving the rise to the top. So we need to address those negative stereotypes. But particularly the point about number, cost of governance. Let me tell you something. Nigeria has roughly 250 million people, right? Now, our total number of federal legislators is what? About 469, right? If you look at that, do the math, right? It's roughly 1 to 500,000 people. Of course, it differs here and there. I have colleagues that represent 2 million people. Do you understand? And I have colleagues that represent about 150,000 thereabout. But look at the global trend. You just check it. Other countries around the world, that you have 1 to 28,000, 1 to 40,000, 1 to 50,000. I have in my 2 local governments in Korea and Oye, I represent 500,000 people. Now, in terms of representation, Nigeria is not even doing too well. Do you understand? To have 469 people represent 250 million people. So I know that there is an argument about cost of governance, but that extra additional cost that it will take to accommodate our women in parliament is not too much for what it is that we want to achieve.
Thank you so much, Honorable Rotimi. And just to my last speaker, Victoria, this is to collaboration. How do we look at collaboration? He just spoke about, internal mechanism, women working together, and I'm talking about women-led organization and, speaking for a holistic re-emerging democracy, but one that is also accommodating of women with disability. Collaboration, what's your call for that?
Collaboration is a very, very important thing. And I think that's why I'm here today. Collaboration, partnership is what will keep this reserve seats bill moving for women and women with disabilities. When you involve women with disabilities in everything you do, you train them and retrain them, and they train others. So I will always say that when you look at a woman, you have seen the nation. Because we cannot be here without our mothers.
Absolutely.
Yes. So a woman is what we have to look into. And a woman with disability also have that capability. She is not different. I've seen situations where they said the woman has a disability, she gave birth to children, after she put to bed, immediately they don't allow the child to take her breast, they take her away. That's not collaboration. You allow her to feel the child, know the importance of a child. She is also a human being. You train her into doing it. I was trained into becoming who I am today. When I married and I gave birth to my son, my neighbors will come and peep to see how I can take care of the child. And I surprised them because I was taking care of my siblings from one child to the other, from this sister to the other sister. So when you collaborate with women, and especially a woman with disability who feels weak, when you involve her, she feels on top. She feels recognized. You have given her a voice. You have taught her something. She might not, the disabilities varies. But when you look at a woman with disabilities and teach her, train her, involve her, partner with her in the little she can gain. Some can gain all, like me, I can get everything, but we have other disabilities that they have their own, since we have our various needs. So when you involve a woman with disabilities, I think you have trained the nation too.
Thank you so much. That is profound. That is absolutely profound. When you collaborate with a woman with disability, she is seen and she feels on top. I think just to round it off, and I'm sure I've been given the time, but it's a women's session, so give us a bit of a minute. Reserve timing.
Be careful.
So just two. You see many questions in this session? Many questions. Okay, so I'll just have two. One male, one female.
Okay.
Are you sure you want to ask the question? So let me start with the young lady there in red, please. Please introduce yourself and then go straight to your question.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Victoria Wane, and I am a strong and passionate advocate for girls in leadership. My question is all about the reserved seat for bill, the reserved seat bill for women. So I'm going to say that I think that some of the problems that we girls face is not that we are not really allowed to participate. I like to tell myself that Nigeria is not like Afghanistan, where women are not given the opportunity to go to school, to participate in elections and all of that. And I think when we want to address the lack of girls in leadership, I think we should take it from the roots. I was a student leader in my school, and I can tell you some of the problems I faced. And those problems even came from girls more than it came from boys. Yes. I was one of the few people who dared to contest for an election that was male-dominated in the University of Benin since 1970. And guess what? When I contested for that election, there were other girls that said, oh, she don't go do something before she go enter here. So when I passed, they're like, okay, see this one. That was one of the things that made other girls not contest for such positions in school. So I think that when we want to talk about this reserved seat for bill, even as we talk about the Senate and all of that, that we should look at the problems from the root. There is also poverty. Finance, a lot of girls do not even have the money to be able to contest. When I was in school, I had almost 3 jobs. I was selling bags, I was selling shoes, I was fixing nails to get money to contest for elections because I wanted to be at the table where decisions about me, my school fees, and everything were being said. I was one of the few people who would come out to protest during the time of election and all of that. So my entire question, to the reserved seat bill is that now that we're talking about it, bringing additional women into it, are we not saying that when girls contest against men, they won't win, so therefore they need special seats for them to now be represented at the Senate? Gender equality that we are all talking about. And then when we also talk about the fact that, oh, this seat now is now women, are we not saying that girls, you can forget about the other ones. Now, this one is for you. Contest for it. It's also one question. And then the last question.
Okay, I think one question per person. That is actually two-pronged approach. And it's such a significant question. I think I'll take 3 more, but let me have the young man at the back, please. Your name and go straight to your question.
My name is Shoaib Moazu. My question is, why is it that, why use the term reserved in the bill trying to create spaces for women? I'm asking this because when taxes are being paid, it is paid equally by both genders that are both earning, yes? If that is the case, why does the case for politics have to be different? When certain women can run with their own money or be bankrolled to run for different respective positions or offices. My question goes to Honorable Akin Rotimi. Thank you.
I think that was a similar question.
Okay, that's a similar question.
Let's
but
ask something that has not been asked before.
Sorry. Let me have Bukola. She has one, and then Dr. Jude will round it off from there.
Thank you so much. Fantastic panel. Honorable. Honorable is my friend, so it's not like I'm putting you on the spot. But I think first is to the cost of governance. I'm not sure what Nigerians are worried about is for us to increase the number of representatives that we have in the National Assembly. I think it is about, that it is expensive compared to, what everyday Nigerians earn in terms of economy. So as we are thinking around increasing the numbers of representatives to include women, can we rethink, maybe the economy of remuneration for the National Assembly? I think that's, the biggest concern. But my second question is about political structure. I know that intervention around the reserved seat is not a lifetime intervention. So it's just something that, okay, can we adopt this approach and let's see what the outcome looks like. But where we can have a more lasting intervention would be intra-party structures.
Okay.
Why is it such a problem for us to have political party structures that insist that they must throw up women to contest elections? I am asking you the question because you are a politician yourself. Each state of the 36 states in Nigeria has 3 senatorial districts. And politicians are good with throwing up zoning, for example. So can we have a system that insists that APC, PDP, ADC must have at least 1 female senator?
All right.
And then begin to zone that. So if, say, Ikole Oye produce a woman under this administration, then maybe Ijero or wherever produce another the next elections. And then we keep it going like that. I would like you to really share from your political experience, why is that such a problem? And Adaora, if we are going to be leading that advocacy, Honorable Rotimi, who should we be speaking to? INEC? I'd like you to really share your thoughts.
All right, thank you so much. I think she's speaking to party quota system, but Mr. Jude, if you would quickly, because I see over 12 hands up and we can't take any more questions.
Thank you so much. This is really, really exciting, and I'm glad with the contributions we're having here. The point I want to make is that I understand the need to do something for women. And this is something that is time-bound. We want to test it. But frankly, it smacks of tokenism. Because the whole narrative about this bill is about men giving women space. I'm sorry, pardon my French, that's bullshit. They should be giving us space. And that is what I find a little bit troubling. Because we're not taking the hard decision, right? It's good, create additional 100 seats, throw in women there, and life goes on. Why can't the political parties, and that's my question, go back and say, pass a law that says, if you do not have at least 20% of women in your candidates, you can't stand for election in Nigeria. Then it is no more tokenism. Then the men can actually concede something. Because right now, we are conceding nothing. We are conceding nothing. And if we're not conceding anything, we're not making progress. I'm sorry.
All right. Thank you so much. And I think that's where we draw the curtain call. Woo! Oh, boy. It just got started. I think I will, Honorable Rotimi, your eyes are shining. So let Chief Okuche start, and then I come to you, Honorable Rotimi, and then maybe Asmao, you round off our thoughts. Yeah.
First things first, can everyone put their hands together for themselves for the passion, the contribution to this very important discussion? I personally love being in rooms like this where you are not just re-echoing the thoughts and the perception of the panelists, but we also hear real feedback, real time on the work that we're doing. So thank you for these very pertinent questions and contributions. I'll start off with you, Victoria. You asked that, why do we need special seats? Why do we need reserve seats? You ran for elections as student leaders. You sold bags. You were in the face of violence, and you were not perturbed. You put yourself out there in this position. So let me answer this. Nigeria currently ranks worse than Iraq. When it comes to women's participation in politics. 41 out of 54 African countries have one level of affirmative action law or something. Nigeria doesn't. From time immemorial, since the advent of our democracy, we have practiced that women, if you have the appetite for politics, if you have the desire to be voted in, put yourself out there and you'll be voted for. Senator Natasha is prime example. She wanted to run for governor of her state. Then she wanted to run for senator of her state. Guess what happened to her? The roads to her polling units were excavated. She was beaten up. She was intimidated. She was threatened. Till this very moment, she's facing backlash. And are you telling me that the same thing that's happening to her is happening to her male colleagues at the same level? So when we talk about women's involvement in governance, we are not talking about women who lack the confidence. We're not talking about women who lack the capacity. We're talking about women who are brilliant, women who have the competence and the courage, but the system is structurally skewed against them. Some of them have the finances, some of them have the intelligence, but they are told, how dare you speak when men are speaking? Can we keep going on like this?
No.
We cannot. Therefore, we need a law. We need a legal mechanism where women come on the decision-making table and they are not told that, hey, you are weaker just because you are coming through reserved seats. We need to be intentional about our efforts to move this country forward. And that is what the reserved seats for women's bill is trying to do.
Absolutely.
And listen, this bill, as I said earlier, is just the starting point. It's not the finishing line. This does not deter women from running for the traditional seats. Just because the Reserved Seats for Women's Act, once it's passed into law by the special grace of God, because I know that it will be,
all right,
it doesn't stop women from running for the traditional seats.
Absolutely.
Remember, it's structural, it's financial, it's cultural, it's religious, and even legal because of the lack of law that is preventing women from. I give this example, Adora, I want to end on this. We've all heard the saying that feed a man fish and you feed him for a day, and teach him how to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. Now imagine that river, due to negative social norms, tradition, patriarchy, culture, has now spread news around the community and the town that women are not allowed to go fishing in that river. Can you see how economically you keep one set of people aside from participating in the economy, from providing food, welfare, and means for their families to thrive?
I'm being given the nod.
Why
all right. Honorable Rotimi, please, on the last note.
In 1 minute.
Please. Yes, in 1 minute.
While I do.
Yes, indeed.
Where do I even start from?
Where anywhere, but in 1 minute.
Okay, just very quickly, right? Victoria, I encourage you, in preparing for politics and governance, you have to do all you can to build the capacity financially, build your networks, build intellectual capacity, and otherwise. So you're on the right track. My brother that talked about equal opportunities, yes, it is correct. The Constitution is very clear about the fact that male or female, anyone can run for office. Now, when you talk about this particular bill, the way I like to look at it is our bodies produce blood and gets around, right? Mm-hmm. But at a time when someone is injured, do you understand? A doctor might prescribe that for a period, let this person get blood transfusion until the body's system can get back to working. What we are doing to women currently is an injury. Less than 5% in the entire parliament is an injury. This is a stopgap measure that is for a period. It is not only happening, being proposed in Nigeria, it has happened in other jurisdictions around the world. Someone talked about party structures, affirmation, and all the likes. Who should we be talking to? I think, it's very clear that we should have two tracks. While we're working on the special seats, we shouldn't also lose sight of the fact that we need to address the systemic issues that exclude women from running for regular seats. So when you talk about, please, when you talk about who should we be talking to leaders that you know, right, have the capacity to make those changes. Governor Dapo Abiodun, please, can you put your hands together for him? Governor Dapo Abiodun. You know why? Because recently he ensured, through the party systems, through everything, to ensure that when we were going to elect the replacement for late Honorable Oriyomi Ononuga, who sadly passed away, at least they worked through the systems to ensure that a woman was put forward. Governor Monday Okpebolo in Edo State, he supported Honorable Omosede Benedon to be able to run for office.
All right.
And then last but not the least is, when we talk of tokenism, do you understand? I don't see it, but I've given you that analogy of a blood transfusion.
All right.
In closing, these are very desperate times.
Very desperate.
Do you understand? Nigeria needs to turn and course correct in so many ways. And we need our women at the table.
Thank you
The
so
important
much.
thing is support this bill, do you understand, to pass, and then, down the line when we ensure that we've been able to reach some sort of parity, it can always be taken off. There is a sunset clause that once we achieve it,
then we can
it can be taken off.
Thank you so much,
Awesome,
Honorable.
awesome.
Sorry, MC, can I just, with the privilege, thank my guest before you interrupt? Asmal, just as I thank you, one word.
One word or 1 second?
One sentence. One, because you are going to punch me if you don't do that. Because
Adora, I thought you wanted to thank
Yes,
the
I'm
panelists.
thanking her and telling her to say her thankful words.
Oh, for me, I think my last word would be just that the Electoral Reform Act has to also be reformed again and again, the Electoral Act rather,
All right.
so that it gives INEC the power to enforce that intra-party system should have at least the quota that is deserving for women.
Thank you so much, Dr. Asmal Leo, Executive Director, Center for Nonviolence and Gender Advocacy in Nigeria. Please, a round of applause for her. She's been a fantastic panelist. I'd also like to thank Chief Osazi Binedio Nokuche, convener, the Reserve Seats for Women's Bill Campaign Coalition. Thank you so much. You saw the energy in the room. And Honorable Akin Rotimi, Chairman, House Committee on Media and Public Affairs. Thank you so much for wading in and staying the TED. And, of course, Victoria Samuel Sani, Coordinator Women with Disabilities Inter-Party System. Thank you so much. And it's been a fantastic panel here. And my parting word would be that I ran an election in 2019 and I saw the system. Patriarchy is real. Gatekeepers of patriarchies have become socialized to do so. And until the law interrupts that dissection, we may still be here talking about this in another 10 years. So thank you so much.